Really excited to have an opportunity to talk to you about what we at CyberEurope think the future of security should be. Let me start this talk with a moment of honesty. In the world we live in today, hackers are winning. Banks, hospitals, airways, universities, all of these companies are being targeted, and those targets are being successful. So we all know that these logos were present in the last couple of months in the news, and there was nothing massive happening in the world. But these huge companies with huge investments were still breached. On the other hand, it's pretty obvious that the world is digitalizing. It's moving everything into digital. And in only one generation, we moved from a society when we use computers only for specific tasks to actually doing almost everything with computers. We spend roughly 80% of our work time at the computer today. Even jobs that are field-based, like construction sites or patrolling the city, still have a ratio of 1-to-1 for a computer per employee, and that doesn't count for mobile phones. So what this means is that the attack surface is rapidly changing as well, and threats are becoming more and more dangerous, and they find different ways and sophisticated methodologies to attack our organizations. When we first had a PC, the virus could have broken our operating system and we couldn't work on it. Then we created a web and we started doing online businesses. This is where attackers start stealing money from us. Then we put more digital data online so that attackers now got access to the personal identifiable information and intellectual property. When Stuxnet was published by Kaspersky in 2010, we understood that the cyber hacks can now be physical and can actually damage things physically. And by the way, since then, we started using the word cyber everything, cyber security. Before that, it was a computer hack. After the Stuxnet, it became a cyber hack. In the first few years, we also saw that critical infrastructure can be a target for an attacker, and it doesn't have to be a government body or governmental organization. And also, as you all know, in 2017, there is what we call cyber proliferation, where NSA and CIA tools leaked and now became available to bad guys online. And these tools are now being used in operations like WannaCry, WannaMine, NotPetya, for example. If this is what the future is holding for us, our autonomous cars smashing into each other, smart cities being fully disconnected at once, and identity theft at a time where we're going to spend roughly 50% of our time in virtual reality. All of that coupled together, it makes our future to look really dark and frightening. But I want to be optimistic, and let us all be optimistic. I think that we're not doomed to fail here, that we, as defenders, we must win, and we will win. As more risk cyber threats are throwing on us, it also makes us to think about different ways of protecting. And we've seen in the last year that this has improved. A lot of new startups came up. And CyberEurope is one of them. 6 years on the market today, we're just one of those unicorns of AI and EDR. All these companies, they're trying to do things differently. But the biggest promise of all of those startups is actually artificial intelligence technology that they're using to move the asymmetry between the attacker and defender in the defender's part. And I'm going to spend the rest of the presentation actually proving the point that we can shift the asymmetry between the attackers and defenders using artificial intelligence. So let's agree, and the good news are we will win. The question now is, how do we win? To start answering this question, I would like you to note the things that we are all aware about. Well, most of us do, but I still want to point at it. The attacks are very complex. They are hard. They take weeks and months to execute. the attacker sits there in a dark room and has not enough information to be effective in what he's doing. Basically, an attack is hard to operate. Now, even though attack operations are hard, what we found surprising is that penetration is always inevitable. When we as defenders think of different phases of an attack, we want to focus our efforts on preventing everything before it does any damage to our environment. Because if the attacker cannot hack in, cannot penetrate our environment, then they cannot do much damage. The problem is that penetration is inevitable. Our founders started their cybersecurity career in the 8200 unit of the Israeli Defense Force, where they led a technical team of cyber offenders actually working for government to do certain dirty tasks, as every similar governmental organization would do. And what they found was, in their experience, they could get an initial foothold in every organization 100% of the time. It could take them a day or a week. Sometimes the operation could take them a month, but they would always get in. Always. Given the complexity of cyber operation itself, as we've agreed, the cyber kill chain takes on an average 99 days to execute before the damage is actually will happen. And also couple that with the fact that the prevention is ineffective, so penetration is inevitable. We have two choices, and we have to make those choices right now. So number one choice is that we decide that infection is actually the highest priority that we need to focus on. And that we need to try to stop it completely before the actually bad guy gets into the organization, into any of the phases apart from the initial infection. And the second option is that we need to understand that penetration is inevitable and focus efforts in post-infection phases of the attack. Up until now, we chose the first option. We put most of our investment on trying to prevent what we all believe is unpreventable. We're building walls that will never be able to fully protect us. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't build those walls. We should, because it's safer with them. What I'm saying, we just need to invest that money on someone who will show you that your wall can be bypassed, either above, beyond, or find a broken brick somewhere in it and get into it. So this is why I didn't put all the 100% of all the investment in the penetration stage of the attack, because once the attack succeeds, we'll then need to perform certain post-mortem tasks to find out what was the root cause of an attack and try to remediate. We, the defenders, need to remember we are here to protect the environment, our organizations. And this is very important to understand. As prevention doesn't work, our goal is not to prevent. Our goal is to protect the organization. If I'm unable to prevent the infection, but I can isolate all the assets that the bad guy may have used or are using at the moment, I did my job. I have protected the environment. And this notion is very important for me to uncover why defenders will win, if we look at the protection rather than prevention. So how do we protect is the question I would like to ask. But then, in order to answer this question, I think that we need to ask it differently. When does an attack fail? We need to identify what is happening when the attack is failing. And remember, I told you that our founders were 100% efficient in getting into the organization and getting the foothold in the environment. What I didn't tell you is that the operations themselves were not 100% successful. They were near to that. The notion of being able to get the footprint in the organization and being able to execute your operation are two different types of attacks. The penetration is easy to go through. Now, if we gain visibility throughout the entire life cycle and we actually can see what is happening before the damage is happening, this is where we win. So when does an attack fail? And from our experience as a CyberEurope, founders say it's always an ultimate defender is that can stop an attack. An ultimate defender is the one who understands attack operation, who will understand the tools, techniques, and features used by bad guys against us. It's the one who is capable of collecting the data and making sense of it. It's the guy who is curious and determined, and I think the latter is the most important part. The ultimate defender is the person that that won't go to sleep if they feel something suspicious is going on in their environment, or just at least a weird thing that they cannot say for sure whether it's malicious or not. These guys, they're type of people will do their job not because they're loyal to their employer, but rather because they love what they do. They like the thrill of protecting the environment, of actually being in a war with someone they've never seen before and not giving up their environment to someone that is trying to penetrate it. These people will never say that the best day of their work life was when nothing has happened. They will always tell that the best day of their work was when they were able to stop the attacker. And how do we call this? So how do we call this process of stopping the attacker? We call it hunting. In our world, it obviously looks more like this. Cyber defense hunting is about being proactive as a defender. It's about when you wait for the attack to reveal itself, because once it does, it already performed the damage. It's already way too late. You need to be proactive and find different stages of an attack before the damage is happening. Hunting is about asking questions, investigating what's not right, understanding what's going wrong. It's collecting the data, making sense of it, visualizing your network to control it, and investigating on even minor leads. And most importantly, never giving up. Hunting is our way to reverse the asymmetric problem of cybersecurity. When we follow a prevent everything strategy, it means that the defenders must be successful 100% of the time. And the bad guy needs just one opportunity to get in unnoticed. Even if we have prevention tools that are effective for 80% of attacks, or let's be more optimistic and let's trust the vendors saying that 99% of attacks can be stopped with preventative technologies, the attacker will try 10, 100, 1,000 times, and eventually they will get in. Moving to a detect anything strategy means we can detect any part of the attack to protect our organization. So now the attacker needs to bypass all of the detection traps we set for him 100% of the time. And we need to catch him once anywhere in the cycle to protect the organization. So by moving from prevent everything defense strategy to detect anything, we're changing the asymmetry in cybersecurity. We're now giving the advantage to the defenders. Now that we know what we need to do and how we're going to do it, the next step will be to recruit the right people for the job. But as we can see in this specific article, and I'm sure you feel it better in your own world, and numbers I'll give you doesn't matter, we have a problem with resource, with smart people available to us. The shortage in professional people to fill the positions in our teams is crucial. There might be a specific company that is a barrier in one or another way, but in general, as a sector, we have a huge gap in qualified personnel. This is a significant problem everywhere in the world, not as much in US and Europe, but rather more in Japan and the rest of Southeast Asia. Even Israel, that is considered to be a cyber hub, we still lack specialists. The answer to manpower shortage, as it always has been, is technology. Our answer to it is what we call AI hunting, artificial intelligence hunting. Using CyberEurope and AI technology, we have automated the process of cyber defense hunting. We're able to train the machine to do this for us automatically, and actually to become that ultimate defender who doesn't sleep, who doesn't need weekends and vacations. the defender on steroids. I know some one of you might have a guy in the company like that, but I can bet that his social skills are worse than that of the machines. So in order to be able to solve the problem of automated hunting, we need an AI engine first. We need the technology. We need to have the knowledge of algorithms and models that we will teach this engine for. And third, we need ways to teach the AI engine dynamically in time so it gets smarter and smarter with every day. The outcome should provide us with the ability to see more across the entire attack phases, or all of the attack phases, or the entire attack landscape. We will understand more by using behavioral analytics and not relying on only known bad or good stuff, the IOCs, the indicators of compromise of this world. And we will stop more by responding quickly and fixing the damage. We like to call this process a reverse IR. We all know what IR is, incident response. So reverse of IR is responding before the incident. I want to tell you a story of a successful targeted attack protection we did in CyberEurope. It was the very first targeted attack that we stopped for one of our customers. It was in early 2015. We started a proof of concept with one of the customers who had 19,000 endpoints in his environment. And the customer had a feeling, a slight sensation that they shared with us that there is something suspicious in their environment, but they're not sure what it is. They can't put their finger on exactly what is happening. But there is some feeling of weirdness that is going on. And they asked us to step in. So now we changed our mind, and instead of deploying just several sensors in the lab environment or on some small subset of machines, we deployed it throughout 19,000 endpoints in just 2 days. And at the time, we had an engine already built, the AI hunting engine, but it didn't have enough modules or models or algorithms to identify the maliciousness or abnormalities in behavior. So at the time, the company consisted of roughly 10, 15 people globally. And this exercise was actually employed the entire team of CyberEurope at the time. So CyberEurope divided itself into 2 groups of people, the research team and developers group. The research team was responsible for creating those models, the questions to ask. Actually, they were creating the intelligence of what kind of data we're going to be looking at. What are the questions are we going to be asking the data our sensors are collecting right now throughout the 19,000 environment? And the other team was a developers team who actually took this knowledge and applied it in our already working engine. So all of the models of behavior and algorithms that the research team identified, we applied it and enabled and taught our AI engine for those. This is why we had 2 teams for that. The something is wrong feeling. People are familiar with this something is wrong feeling when you can't tell definitely whether you're under attack. Deployed to 19,000 endpoints in 2 days and used hunting as an exercise. The research team focused their effort on finding compromised assets. So they looked at users and hosts. They specifically looked at the senior management machines of the company and Active Directory server. They focused their research on the process object because the process is the object that acts on the machine, that does something in the environment. Nothing is happening until there is a process running on the machine. So when you open a Word or calculator or PowerShell, it's an instance of a process. Every new application that you open, that's another process instance that you're running. And each application, so our engine was able to correlate everything that these processes were doing, so we can ask questions about what network communications did the process perform, what were the DNS queries it was doing, what were the registry keys this process changed in our environment. And we mapped these behaviors, and we then started asking right questions. So are there any processes rare to the organization? standing out of the baseline. Are there any processes that are not signed? If they're signed, whom they're signed by? Is the communication of the process normal? Because if calc.exe is talking to China, that's really, really suspicious. And if it was a shell-type process that was launched, was it automatic or manual? Because it makes big difference. Known indicators were ignored at the time because they were applied automatically and they didn't provide us with any interesting information or suspicions or pieces of evidence. After a few days of work, the research team had a lot of information, a lot of suspicions, a lot of pieces of evidence that they could not tell for sure that are a part of malicious operation. And everything the research team did manually, we then automated and used the developers team to teach the AI engine to perform a cross-enterprise querying of these same questions. So the research team used certain third-party tools, but when the developers team enabled our AI engine to perform this at a scale and very quickly, this is where we found the smoking gun. What we found was a suspicious DLL loaded to OWA server. We all know OWA is a webmail component of Microsoft Exchange server. So if you are an Exchange organization and you allow your users connecting to your Exchange when they are out of the office, most likely you're using OWA server. It's like a gateway into your environment that is dealing with a lot of authentication data, with a lot of creds. So basically a user that wants to get to his email, he needs to authenticate on the OWA before he gets in. Therefore, this is a very tasty, lucrative target for an attacker. What we found was that the OWA process loaded two modules. One of them was signed and verified by Microsoft, and it was launched from a valid folder. The other one was unsigned and was run from an uncommon path. So as we saw the sign and verified process, everywhere else in the organization with the same metadata, we identify it as legit. But as we couldn't identify the same behavior for the unsigned process, although it had the same name, .dll, but it was just running from a different place. When we reverse engineered this DLL, we saw that there were two modules to it. One was intercepting HTTP traffic in OWA server, and when it saw credentials being used, it would store them in a local text file. The other part of the DLL was a command and control established with the attacker so that he can communicate back to the malware and actually exfiltrate the data. We identified that there were 11,000 stolen credentials, compromised users at this moment of time. With this amount of compromised users in 19,000 users organization, they were fully compromised. We also looked, so when we reverse engineered the code of the DLL module, we also saw that there was a name of the targeted organization used in the code, which told us definitely that was a targeted attack. This malware was specifically designed to attack this specific organization. What we learned from this exercise is that in order to be ahead of the threat, we need two things. We need to have a technology that will automate data analytics because humans can't analyze this amount of data that we collect. And second, we need to define behavioral models based on deep understanding of tools and techniques used against us. The combination of the two is important. We rely on our security expert to define the relevant models and to differ between the good and bad. And we rely on the technology to be able to analyze and crunch through this data all the time, 24/7. So today we, as an organization, we operate in a very similar way. We have a research team combined with expert with very deep technical knowledge about offensive operations. We have the defenders team that help our customers understand the attacks themselves. And we have AI engineers who are teaching our AI engine to become smarter and smarter and to tackle new attacks that are coming in. What is special about AI technology is that it is an infrastructure and not a complete solution. Based on this technology, our detection capabilities improve over time. Unlike previous technologies like signatures or sandboxes, which effectiveness of which degraded over time because attackers learned how to bypass them, we're becoming more and more effective because we're setting more detection traps on their way. I hope you found this session useful. Whether you did or you didn't, I'd like you to remember 5 takeaways. We as defenders will win. To win, we cannot only talk about prevention anymore. We need to focus on protecting our organizations, not preventing. To do that, we need to see more, understand more, and stop more. And the latter, AI technology, is what will lead us to change the asymmetric problem of cybersecurity that we have, so that we have the advantage over the attacker. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you had fun watching me biting this strap.